My name's Jharder. I am a branding photographer in the St. Louis area. I've been doing photography in general for a little over a decade now. In fact, next year will be 12 years actually. I got started actually in school. I took a photography class, didn't think that it would turn into anything, but by the end of a semester, I ended up loving it so much that I decided that it was something that I wanted to do. So 2008 is kind of when my journey with photography started. I'm going to share my screen with you here real quick. So I've been, like I said, a photographer for over a decade now. Got my start, photographing families and senior portraits, and eventually kind of got my start into weddings eventually. Kind of probably a year after starting shooting. So I got into it pretty quickly and loved it. It was kind of one of those things that I loved a lot of things, and I wasn't sure if any of them would stick. And photography for me was one of those things that that stayed consistent. I never fell out of love with it, so I kept up with it. So as I continued, I knew that, especially weddings, I still enjoy shooting all of it, but it just wasn't the business that I wanted to build for myself. So kind of in my personal life, I would have conversations with people and friends, and basically I always ask them, what do you want to do? If you could do anything, what would you want to do? Since I was trying to chase this dream of mine of something that I wanted to do, I loved asking other people the same question. So I'd always ask people, if money weren't an option, if time weren't an option, what would you be doing? And kind of it clicked with me after some time that I would combine this idea of this conversation with photography itself. And that's kind of how my journey with branding photography got started. To be honest with you, I was probably shooting branding photos before I even knew what branding photography was, because all I knew was I wanted to help my friends' dreams come true of what they wanted to do and kind of help build their business. And so I started photographing that. It wasn't until later that I kind of learned what branding photography was and that people were actually doing this for a living. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what brand photography is. Branding photography tells the story of your business to your ideal client while elevating your brand. Basically, I talk to people a lot about telling the story of your brand, because it's one thing to tell people what you do. It's another thing to show people what you do and show kind of the behind the scenes and the purpose behind what you do. So for instance, if let's say you sell clothing, instead of saying just like, I sell clothing, here are a few items that I sell, or I'm a restaurant, here's a list of food that that are on our menu. The difference that you should kind of be focusing at is showing people the value of their investment instead of just showing them what you're selling. And notice I said value. We want to bring their focus to the fact that what we're offering them has value to it. So another example is I see a lot of realtors online, for instance, and they're always posting just a listing that they're showing. And while that's great, and that's something that we need to do, especially if we're in the business, we want to show people what we're selling. We want to give them a little kind of deeper look into who we are and what we can offer them. So let's say that someone is not in the market for a house. They're not going to follow you. And you may think, well, if they're not in the market to buy a house, why would I want to sell to them? But the reality is that maybe eventually they want to buy a house, or maybe they know someone that is looking for a house. So instead of just posting a listing and saying, here's a house that I'm selling right now, maybe instead think about, what are some of the local coffee shops that are in this neighborhood? What are some of the parks? Where, if you work for yourself, where could you go and kind of sit and work on a work day? And this kind of will give people who are not in the market for a house a little more interest into and what you're talking about. So that you give them something to follow, to then eventually when they are in the market for a house, you'll be at the top of their mind. Or if they know somebody that's looking, or if someone mentions it, you're the first person that they think of. So just setting yourself apart in that way by showing them value versus just talking about the things that you're selling. So what are some of the ways that branding photography can be used for? First thing is headshots. I get a lot of people that are always asking me, I need headshots, and I like to kind of tell them about branding photography because headshots is something that you can incorporate into your branding shoots. It can show a little more personality. You can keep it more reserved if that makes sense for your brand, or you can show kind of a little more character in these branding shoots and use those photos for your headshots as well. You can also use it for social media content. So if you're someone that uses Instagram or Facebook or whatever you use to promote your business, you can use the photos from your branding shoot for your social media content as well. You can use it for your website. So if you're designing a website, if you're changing your website, or maybe you use some stock images in the past, you can use these photos from your branding shoot to give people a little bit more of a personal look into your business by putting these on your website. And then for email marketing, or any sort of marketing, to be honest, you can use these photos for postcards, for newsletters, for email marketing. If you send regular emails out to people, again, it just makes that personal connection to your client in all of your marketing as well. So what are the benefits of branding photography? So kind of go back to what I said earlier, it allows you to tell your story. So it's not just a photo of something you offer, but it's telling the story. Being in business for ourselves, there's a story behind everything. So the ups and downs of our business, day in and day out, the origin story, where you started versus where you are now, all of these things, you can use these photos to tell that story of your business. It creates a connection. So I talked earlier about how putting these things in your marketing and on your website, it allows people to have that instant connection. It's amazing to me how many websites I go to and I don't see the people in their photos at all. So it's like, I already don't know who you are. And by using these photos, on your different platforms, you're immediately making a connection to people. So your potential customer can go and have that kind of that small town feel, when you go to a business and who's working there. It's kind of the same idea. It sets you apart. So, I have this conversation a lot, the oversaturation conversation. It's kind of a hard thing to say, but oversaturation, I have this conversation, especially in photography, all the time. In fact, it got to the point that I had someone once tell me, someone who I had never met, said, there are so many photographers and it's hard to know, who to choose from. I wish that they would just take all the photographers and put them all on a website so I could just look at them all and pick from there. And I thought, really? You want to, reduce what I have to offer to just a sea of other people? Talk about oversaturation. That would be even more overwhelming just to have them all in one place. And I don't know about you, but I, wouldn't know who to pick if they were all just right in front of me. So having photos like this will set you apart in the sense that if you are in an industry where there's a lot of people doing what you do, you're going to rise to the top because people are going to immediately gravitate to what you're putting out there and notice that there's a difference in your business over someone else in the same industry. It also elevates your brand. So, having this over maybe a photo that you just pulled off of the internet. It just shows that you have, an investment in your business and you take yourself seriously as far as a business goes. So it elevates your brand. And in fact, a little story about the woman in this slide. She was a client first, has become a friend, but she sent me a text message last week and said that she used one of her photos from her branding session in an ad on Facebook. It was like a little, I think she said it was like $30 for the ad. And she ended up closing $3,000 worth of business from that one ad. And she says she's still talking to 5 other potential clients that could be, turn into more business as well. So combine the price of the photo shoot with the price of the ad, and she's still making over $3,000 just from that one ad. So again, it just goes back to the fact that it elevates your brand. And then it presents a professional image, just like I was saying. It shows people that you take your business serious and your brand seriously. So what is a branding photography experience like? I have the conversation of, well, what's different than having someone else just show up and take my pictures? I don't understand, and a lot of people are confused. So I'll break it down for you just like I do everybody else, but I do a little more than just show up and shoot with a client. So the first thing that I like to do is sit down and have a strategy session. So I may do a Zoom call or a FaceTime if meeting in person is too difficult. Otherwise, I do like to sit down and have a meeting with my clients. And some of the things that we talk about are, what's your brand, what's the feel of the shoot that you want to have, where do you want to shoot the photos? Do you want to do them in a studio, or do you want to do them on location somewhere, or do you want to do them at your office? Whatever it may be. We talk about all those details in the strategy session. The next thing I do after our session is I create an inspiration board. So that may be on Pinterest, that may be somewhere else. But this is a board where you can add photos to it to say, this is the field that I want to kind of emulate, or maybe these are some colors that I want to use, or maybe these are some outfits I want to use. It's just kind of a place where all those things can land so that you can refer back to them and keep those at the top of your mind when you're looking at your photo shoot and planning for it. The next thing is obviously the actual photo shoot. So again, this may include going to your office, and if you have an office where it's very uniquely you, maybe clients meet you at your office, whatever it may be, maybe that's the place that you want to shoot. I can come to your office and shoot there. Maybe if you're kind of a mobile person, we can go to a coffee shop, we can go shoot out in the city, wherever it may be. Or maybe you want a more clean look. You could have a product or anything like that. We could go to a studio that kind of provides that look for you as well. So finally, and the last thing is I give you a private gallery of your photos where you can download them straight from the gallery. You can share that link with other people if you want. Maybe you are in a team with other people and you want them to look at that. You can share that with them, and then you can download them straight from there. So that's kind of all that I have as far as the branding shoot. I wanted to keep it short and simple. I get the question a lot of what is a branding shoot? And the other question is, I get, what can I expect? So I wanted to kind of cover those things so that you could get an idea. So that's kind of all that I have for you today. And I just wanted to say thank you for watching this. If you made it to the end, I would love to stay connected with you. If you are online, maybe on Instagram, on Facebook, feel free to follow me there and reach out and leave me a comment. I'd love to connect with you. Otherwise, you can go to my website and learn a little bit more about what I do and see some of my work there. And you can also book a session there as well if that's something that you're interested in. All right, guys, thanks so much, and I will talk to you later. Bye.